Wildling is directed by Fritz Boehm and stars Belle Crowley, Brad Dourif, Liv Tyler, and Colin Kelly Sordelin. It was produced by IFC Films for a budget of $2 million. The film centers on the character of Anna, played predominantly by Belle Crowley, but when we first meet Anna, she is a much younger girl. She's living alone with a mysterious man referred to only as Daddy, played by Brad Dourif. Now it becomes clear very quickly that Daddy is not Anna's real father, and what we are dealing with is actually a long-term kidnapping scenario. Daddy keeps Anna locked in a room and tells her that he's doing it to protect her because the rest of the human race has been wiped out by a vicious creature known only as the Wildling. Anna, who is young and naive, believes Daddy and never attempts to escape. We then watch as the years pass by and Anna spends all those years locked in her room, never leaving. Now these sequences are very well done, particularly due to the performance of Brad Dourif. Brad Dourif, who is known as Hollywood's favorite over-the-top creepster, actually gives a very sincere and more subtle performance in this film. We are left as an audience wondering what Daddy's endgame is with Anna. There is clearly no sexual desire, and he doesn't seem to get off on being able to control and manipulate another human being. Daddy seems to actually have sincere love and actually care about Anna, which honestly makes his character a lot more creepy. We are wondering why he took her. The best we can guess at this point as the audience is that Daddy's always wanted to have a child in his life, but could never really have one, you know, because he's a creep and no one wants to have a kid with him, so he chose to kidnap one instead. The genuine love and care that he has for Anna makes these scenes very compelling because though we as an audience know the truth of her circumstances, there's still an air of mystery towards what he's doing and what his motives are. As the years go by, we see Anna and Daddy play and bond with each other. He keeps her well fed on a fully vegetarian diet, and they celebrate her birthday every year with a birthday cake. Eventually, Anna becomes old enough and begins puberty and experiences her first menstrual cycle. Daddy, in what seems like a psychotic attempt to keep her young, begins giving her injections so she can't fully go through puberty. The injections eventually make Anna very sick. So much so that Anna eventually begs Daddy to kill her in order to end her suffering. Heartbroken, Daddy seems like he's about to oblige in Anna's request, and he comes into her room seemingly ready to shoot her to put her out of her misery. Unable to do so, Daddy takes one last look at the horrible effects his actions have had on this child, and then decides to turn the gun on himself in a suicide attempt. Now, something that becomes very prevalent within Wildlings is that the film is very metaphorical. This opening sequence for me seemed like a metaphor for the inevitable consequences of sheltering your child from the world, especially if your motivations are more fueled by you trying to keep your child with you and not lose them rather than protecting them. In the second act, we see that Anna has been rescued by the sheriff's department because a neighbor has heard Daddy's suicide attempt. Anna is then told the truth that Daddy is not her real father. She then starts living with the town's new sheriff, played by Liv Tyler, and her young brother, played by Colin Kelly Sordelin, while the police search for her real parents. Here we watch as Anna struggles with adapting to her new life, all while constantly being in fear that the wildlings her daddy told her about were actually real. She even suffers from hallucinations of wildlings during this time. She also experiences changes in her body, including her teeth falling out and hair growing all over her body. It is implied that these changes are a result from the injections she received from Daddy trying to keep her from going through puberty. Honestly speaking, the second act of the film is definitely the weakest part of the movie. These sequences tend to drag a bit. The reason behind it mainly is because of the uncompelling supporting cast. Belle Crowley as the lead does a spectacular job of carrying this film. She really carries the emotional weight of the character who's struggling with finding out that everything that she thought to be true is actually a lie. As the film progresses, Anna is constantly learning new truths, leading you towards finding out the really dark trauma from her past. Belle Crowley really beautifully and very subtly takes the audience on this journey with her, but she's really given no support. Other than her scenes with Brad Dourif, none of the supporting characters really give her anything to work with, especially, sadly, from Liv Tyler. Liv Tyler in this film gives one of the blandest, emotionless, nonchalant performances I've ever seen. Which is sad because the script calls for a lot of nice moments between her and Anna. She teaches her how to shave her legs, she cooks her burgers for the first time, and the idea of a girl who has only had a father figure in her life suddenly being given a mother figure is kind of beautiful and could have been worth exploring. These moments could have been very moving. However, Liv Tyler just seems so unemotionally invested in Anna to the point that she doesn't seem to really legitimately actually care about her. So her scenes with Anna tend to drag a lot because there's just no emotional weight pushing them through. She kind of just moves from scene to scene and just doesn't really care that much about anything going on around her. Honestly speaking, if Liv Tyler wasn't the producer of this film, I'm not sure if she actually would have ever been in it. The character of the sheriff's brother, Ray, he does kind of fall into that trope of, you know, the kid who's bitter because he has to move away from his hometown. But to the actor's credit, he actually does seem to have some real emotional attachment to Anna and seems to actually genuinely care about her. And ultimately, his performance is a lot more compelling than Liv Tyler's. The rest of the town is just filled with archetype characters with zero motivation or development. They're all just relegated to the role that they're supposed to fill. The girls that are meant to bully Anna because she's different. The privileged white guy that, you know, gives her a hard time because he thinks he can take advantage of her. The town creep, etc. Now, things get real dark at Anna's first party, where she gets attacked by a boy attempting to rape her. Anna, who thinks this boy is actually a wildling, kills him by biting out his throat. Anna is eventually put in jail because of the boy's murder. Here, she is visited by Daddy, who actually survived his suicide attempt, and he reveals to her the truth. It turns out that not only are wildlings real, but Annie is herself a wildling. It turns out that Daddy is actually part of a group of hunters that hunt the wildlings in an attempt to exterminate the species. During what was thought to be the last hunt, Daddy stumbles upon a baby wildling after killing her mother, and he is unable to kill her because she looks human. It turns out that wildlings as babies are human, and they don't actually start becoming wildlings until they hit puberty. Now, personally, I love this twist. I thought it cleverly subverted my expectations of what the film was gonna be, and even added a little fantasy element to an already explored story format. It also showed how clever the narrative format was, because now subtle hints from the past suddenly make sense. Daddy kept her on an all-vegetarian diet because he was hoping that by keeping meat away from her, she would never develop a taste for it, and therefore she would never develop a wildling's urge to hunt for meat and food. And it turns out that the hormone injections were not meant to keep her young per se, but more in the hopes of stopping her from going through puberty, therefore she would never actually become a wildling. Anna's teeth falling out and hair growing turns out were actually not the result of the injections, but in fact it was her fangs growing in and the fur of a wildling's growing out of her. The twist really highlights how the filmmakers were able to get those little eccentricities into the film without being too obvious with it. Eventually, Anna escapes jail and the third act begins. The third act is definitely the most dramatically compelling. The energy picks up to an 11. We are now given a very suspenseful cat and mouse sequence where Anna, aided by Ray, is now being hunted by the hunters in the town. This time, they're led by Daddy himself. Anna and Ray manage to evade them, and they eventually make love in an expression of their mutual feelings for each other. However, they are eventually separated and Anna is forced to fend for herself. This sequence also acts as a beautiful metaphor for not allowing a male-dominant society to force women to conform to their standards, and that you should just embrace your true self. This is subtly depicted in the fact that the hunters all are male, and it turns out that all the wildlings are female. Now, the hunters, in their obsession with trying to kill Anna, eventually try to burn down the entire forest she's hiding. This forces a final confrontation between Anna and Daddy. It is revealed that Anna is now pregnant, and Daddy intends to kill her and her baby, swearing to never make the same mistake again. Anna eventually overpowers and kills Daddy, saving herself. She runs off north, seeking shelter, and finally having her baby up in Alaska where they're both safe. And that is Wild. The film has great performances, particularly from Belle Prowley and Brad Dourif. However, I will say that Brad Dourif in the third act of the film kind of falls into his usual shtick a little bit more, which is always entertaining, but just not as good as the subtleties he brought in the opening sequences. The film does subvert expectation and is very imaginative and adds a great layer of fantasy and gives a more original take on the misunderstood monster film. However, the supporting cast is very weak and the second act does drag a lot. However, you have to give the film credit for just its sheer originality. In the end, I'm going to give Wildlings 7.5 out of 10. Hope you all enjoyed this review. I'm going to do my best to try and do just as many independent films as blockbuster films, because personally I really love the independent film industry, and there's a lot of films out there that I really think deserve more attention than they're getting. If you like this video, please click the like button below, and feel free to leave a comment suggesting a film for me to review in the future. Until then, see you all next time.